have instances, you continue those over. And for the spot instances, say for example, if you want to do some major analysis of data, you request the spot instances for a while, and then you just get rid of them, and you make sure that your services are not going to be impacted by the volatility of the amount of instances you have available to you. If we go over to information about network, here we can manage the VPCs, which allow us to create a secure network which we can use to share resources across different instances. For example, if you think about your home, you're going to be having many different devices and they're all connected to, say, a single internet, or you may have, a configuration where you have a single router which connects many different devices together. What you're able to do there is you're able to share information from one device to another. Maybe you're able to do remote desktop and all of those things you can do. And this allows us to have the network creation. And if you want to have advanced access to security and creating your own networks, you can go over to creating a VPC. This is actually a very important topic for the solutions architect exam. The subnet is going to be in the availability zone in which we want to create the specific networks. And if we want to have a specific availability zone, we can specify that. However, we don't need to worry about this. Here, are we using a public IP or are we using a private IP? We can select those informations. And here we have information about an IAM role. An IAM role is going to simplify access to our instance. So if you think about the instances we have, we're going to be needing something what is called a key, and you can basically think about it as a username password type of entry, although it's not really having any username, it's just sort of like a password that you specify, but you can think of it like that. And when you have these key pairs, you're going to be generating hundreds of different key pairs for the different developers that are inside your team for the corporation, and it's really difficult to manage those key pairs because what you have to do is for these instances, for a single instance, you may have to create different key pairs for different people. What you do here is you just say, you know what, we're going to require a couple of privileges, and any user which matches those privileges can do whatever he or she wishes with the system. And if the user does not match those privileges, then he or she cannot access the system. Very simple. You would want to use these IAM roles. They simplify access to your specific servers. Here we can specify information about the shutdown behavior. So for example, it's basically really easy to terminate your systems. You just go over and click terminate. And once you click terminate, the system is gone. And usually you might want to specify something like, I want to save the root volumes. However, your system is going to be gone and any computations that you are running are going to be gone as well. And any services that were provided through that system are gone. So what you want to do here is you want to make sure that the shutdown behavior that you have is a stop behavior and not a terminate behavior. It's going to be automatically terminated otherwise. Also, if we click on this protect against accidental terminations, this is actually going to be like one of those notices that we get where it's going to be, do you want to terminate this? However, it's going to be a little more vigorous than that. What it says is you cannot terminate this. And what you have to do then is you have to go inside the settings, turn this specific feature off, come back, and then terminate it. So in that time, you get the idea that do I actually want to terminate this? You get second thoughts on that and all of those aspects. You are able to control that from that specific area. Here we have what is called monitoring. The monitoring is going to allow you to look at exactly which services are using the CPU inside my system. So say for example, you're running a website where you have two different aspects to it. So one aspect is the web application itself. So the fact that you're running the website and you're going to be processing all the queries that the customers give you. Maybe the customer clicks on this button here, you direct them to a different page, all of those aspects. And then maybe you have a database attached to it. So you have all of the sales purchases, all of those data attached to it on that system. Now, you want to understand which aspect is using what percentage of the CPU. So for example, if the database is using lots of CPU and you're having problems on the system and your specific web application is not running properly, maybe you want to transport that off to a different instance, and you can quite simply do that by looking at exactly what CPU usage is being used. You can look at memory usage. So say you're using 4 GB out of the 5 GB, how is the RAM usage being working, and all of those aspects you can look here. Obviously additional charges apply, so we're not going to be clicking on this. The last setting that we have available to us here is the tenancy setting. So the tenancy setting is going to be the information about where we're going to be hosting this instance. So if you think about it, the Amazon data warehouses are going to be having these servers stacked up in racks, and they're going to be stored there. All of the heating, cooling, the power usage, all of that is going to be managed by Amazon. Here you're basically using a couple of buttons and running this instance. Now, a single hardware is going to be able to support many different instances. So for example, if you have a Amazon machine which provides, 1952 GBs of this RAM, and in that case, you can actually section that off and provide that into thousands of different T2 micros, hundreds of different T2 micros, and provide that over to different users. Now, if you want to have a dedicated system, you can go over to select dedicated and run a dedicated host, and you can click on the dedicated host systems here. Usually this is advanced information, and if you want to have security and hardware security, you can do these settings here. In the advanced settings, we have information about what is the setup code that we want to run. So for example, if we have a specific information about, say we want to install a specific software, we're going to be running some sort of a query which allows us to install that software. We're going to be running a query to update our system. We're going to be running a query to activate access to HTTPS. All of those aspects you can control from a specific text file that either you can upload or you can paste into this user data. And it basically saves you the trouble of going in and then going and hand writing all of those queries out and then having to work with it that way. Here you're going to just paste it, and automatically when your auto scaling group starts working, say you add another instance, it is going to access the specific user data, and it's going to allow you to escape the trouble of having to add that installation cycle yourself. With that, let's end this launching an EC2 instance part 1 lecture. Here we took a look at the 3 steps that are used in order to set up our instance. The first step is to choose the AMI, where we're going to be having the different software packages installed onto our instance. Next was choose the instance computation power, where we looked at how we're going to be associating the number of different CPUs and how we're going to be associating the different amount of RAM. And finally, we looked at the details of launching our instance, such as the number of instances, the payment, the network, and the shutdown behavior. Thank you for joining me here, and let's move along to the next lecture where we complete out this series on launching an EC2 instance.